Marksmen can be one of the most annoying heroes in the game if they are left unchecked. A fully built Karrie is a nightmare for all the high HP heroes in Mlbb, and everyone knows how lethal our sniper queen Leslie is right now. If you want to know some secrets on how to counter the marksman in Mlbb, then you came to the right place. Hi guys, Kazuki here, and in this video we will discuss how to counter all 19 mm in the game. A friendly reminder to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Only 37.2% of our lovely audience have subscribed to the channel, and this affects our team motivation a lot. We are committed to bringing you all the latest news related to our beloved Mlbb. So push the subscribe button as it is free and helps us in getting more and more motivation to make videos, so smash that subscribe button. Let's start with the most popular marksman right now, Leslie. I remember everyone naming Leslie Les Dog because of how vulnerable she is. After the changes made to her, her true damage hurts a ton, and even tanks don't stand a chance in absorbing her lethal true damage bullets. To counter Leslie, make sure you shut her down completely in the early game. The more you delay her in getting items, the more time you can get to turn the tides of the game to your side. There's only one way to counter true damage, and it will be building more HP. Tanks can opt for items like Sky Guardian Helmet to increase their HP significantly, and Twilight Armor for all the heroes to limit her damage to 600. And for hero counters, heroes like Franco Kaja to suppress her. High burst heroes like Lancelot, Gush and Fanny to burst her in an instant, and slow heroes like Hylos and Valir works well. Moving on to Ixia. Ixia is the newest addition to our marksman list, and there aren't many who have seen her true potential. She can be very irritating with her skills in team fights. Her ultimate can be very deadly if timed right in the team fights. And to counter her, use items like Anticuirace to lower her skill damage output, Dominance Eyes to reduce her attack speed, and healing and survival item like Immortality and Winter Truncheon to have an extra chance of surviving. For hero counters, heroes like Ling, Lancelot, Hellcut, Fanny work well due to their high mobility. High burst mages like Farsa, Xavier, Kagura to burst her. Tanks like Belric, Lolita to reflect back the damage she deals. Up next, Brody. Brody is sure a headache to deal within the laning phase, and in the late game his damage can make everyone be scared of him if he gets his power spike early. His ultimate can follow you up for a great distance, and he can use his skill 2 to stun enemies, either engage and run away when someone is chasing him. To counter Brody, you need to take advantage of his less mobility and make him stay in vulnerable position by zoning him. Use items like Wind of Nature and Winter Truncheon to make his ultimate damage useless even if you are fully marked from his passive. Defense items like Queen's Wing and Anticuirace also works well in reducing his damage output. For hero counters, Natalia Hellcut works wonder because of their silence. Lancelot and Saber to burst him down, and heroes like Kadita and Vale for their knockups and high damage burst. Moving on to Clint. Clint can be one of the biggest bullies in the game due to his burst damage and long range. He can also target backline with his passive, and defeat Clint is sure something that you never want on your opposite side. To counter Clint, the first and foremost thing will be not letting him get his items. Gank him constantly to delay his items and make him use his second skill before going full in. Items like Twilight Armor works well to limit his skill damage, and Anticuirace to reduce his skill damage. You can opt for Wind of Nature, Winter Truncheon or Rose Gold Meteor if you don't want to build defense items. For hero counters, heroes with good CC effects like Minotaur, Atlas and Lolita works well to catch him off guard. Hayabusa, Selena and Kadita to one-shot him. Moving on to Karrie. Karrie's true damage can be very irritating for high HP heroes. She melts them like anything with her continuous barrage of attacks, and once she is done with her core items, she will be a menace. One wrong move and you are dead. To counter her, shutting her down in the early game is very feasible. She has a short range than other marksmen, so be sure to take advantage of it by staying out of it when needed. For her counter items, use items like Dominance Eyes to reduce her attack speed and Anti-Curious to lower her damage output. For hero counters, use heroes like Franco Kaza for their suppression and give an opening for your team to take her down. Heroes like Fanny, Link, Saber and Karina to burst her down very quickly, and CC heroes like Eudora, Kadita and Vale to CC the hell out of her. Up next, Spear Boy in Moscow. How many times have you lost to Moscow, who will be sneaky at enemy base to finish the game? Or are you fed up of Moscow's penetration damage to back lines even if he is not attacking you? Well, countering Moscow is not that hard, as you have to keep some things in mind, like not staying near walls against Moscow, or he will just stun you and unleash his deadly basic attacks. Making him use his first skill before engaging him to not let him have a chance to retreat. Items like Anti-Curious and Dominance Eyes works very well against Moscow, as he is very basic attacks dependent hero with attack speed. Blade armor also works well if he decided to go with lifesteal items. Heroes like Martis, Lancelot, Roger for their CC immunity and skills. CC heroes like Atlas, Balric, Chow to stop him from doing his thing, and slow heroes like Hylos, Eve and Valir to annoy the hell out of him. Up next, Claude. Claude is one of the most slippery marksmen in the game, and a good Claude player is very hard to catch because of his skill 2. Claude can dish out some very irritating continuous damage, and everyone knows about his AoE damage from his ultimate, one of the best AoE skills in the game. To counter Claude, you need to keep in mind where his monkey is positioned at. Try to stay near his monkey and wait for him to use his skill to return to catch him off guard. He can clear the lanes pretty fast with his ultimate, so do not let him cut your lanes by advanced positioning. For build counters, use items like Queen's Wings, Anti-Curious to have better chance of survivability. You can also go for Wind of Nature and Winter Tension if you don't want to get defense items. For hero counters, use heroes like Hayabusa, Saber to one-shot him. Diggy Franco to disrupt his positions. Heroes like Farsa, Valir, Noveria to zone him out and deal damage from a safe distance. Up next, Irithel. Irithel sure became a very good marksman to use now after the recent changes. She can be very sleek by constantly changing her position and hard to catch. To counter Irithel, you need to either stun her or block out the path where she is expected to go. Her early game damage is not that great, so marking her in the early game can be more efficient, as she will burst down multiple enemies together in the late game due to her AoE damage from ultimate. For build counters, use items like Twilight Armor to limit her damage or Anti-Curious to lower her damage output. You can also go for Wind of Nature to immune her damage. Heroes like Hayabusa, Karina, Saber to one-shot her, or heroes like Franco, Akai and Kaja to pin her down. Moving on to Wanwan. Wanwan is sure one of the most agile heroes in Mlbb due to her ability to jump around while doing basic attacks. Her ultimate takes some time to activate, but once activated, it can turn the tides of a battle. To counter her, make sure she uses her skill 2 before engaging, or she can easily dodge CC effects. Do not stay in the path of her first skill to make her harder to activate her ultimate. Use items like Wind of Nature or Winter Tension to survive her ultimate darts, or you can opt for Dominance Eyes to reduce her attack speed. Heroes like Karina, Lolita, Natalia and Lunox to immune her ultimate, or heroes like Franco, Akai and Kaja to pin her down. Up next, we have Beatrix. With her multiple set of weapons, Beatrix can be nuisance to deal with. She can clear lanes pretty fast, has decent damage in the early game and some wall wrecking damage in the late game. To counter her, you need to make sure that she is getting ganked constantly. She is vulnerable to CC and burst damage, so try to catch her in off positions. For build counters, use items like steel leg plates in the early game to have more chance of survival. Wind of Nature and Rose Gold Meteor works well against her high reap damage, and Blade Armor if she opts for lifesteal items in the late game. Heroes like Balric, Akai and Johnson to disrupt her position and surprise her. You can also go for heroes like Kadita, Eudora, Kagura to instantly burst her down. Up next we have Natan. Natan deals very high continuous damage, and his continuous magic damage can be a headache to deal with, as he will melt almost anyone once he has full stacks of passive. His ultimate clone along with his full stack passive basic attack speed is one of the fastest HP melters in the game, and to counter him, make sure that he doesn't have his ultimate to dodge your skills. For the build counter, use items like Radiant Armor to help survive his continuous magic damage, or Gate Athena if Radiant Armor is still not enough to help you survive. Winter Truncheon can also give you an extra chance of surviving. For hero counters, use heroes like Saber, Hayabusa and Karina to one-shot him, or heroes like Minsitar, Martis, Pakito to annoy the hell out of him. Heroes like Farsa, Kadita also works well due to their high burst damage. Next up is Melissa. Melissa is one of the most annoying MMs, especially for all the melee heroes. Her skills help her to damage you from a long range, especially when there are minions. Her second skill will also later reposition skill 1 even if you are out of range. To counter Melissa, make sure that her ultimate is not available or she won't let you come near her. For build counters, use item like Anti-Cuirass to lower her skill damage output, or item like Brute Frost Breastplate to get stackable defense. Wind of Nature and Rose Gold Meteor can also be used if not opting for defense. For hero counters, use heroes like Hayabusa, Lancelot and Fanny to bust her down. Heroes like Farsa, Change and Kagura to give her damage from a safe distance. Moving on to Hanabi. Hanabi was dead for a while. She had decent skills and great damage, but she was very weak, very weak. But after the revamp, she gained CC immunity, which made her a viable pick and a decent MM. Hanabi gets scarier as she builds more items. It gets to the point where she hit one minion and you die in the back line, so remember, don't let her farm, especially in the early game. For her build counters, use item like Dominance Eyes to reduce her attack speed, or use items like Blade Armor to reflect back damage and not let her get lifesteal. You can go for the Wind of Nature if not opting for defense. For hero counters, use heroes like Gushan, Lancelot, Helker to burst her down, or heroes like Lolita, Balric to reflect back her damage. Popol and Koopa. He is a unique marksman. He is less of a marksman and more of a caster, and commander if you say, but nevertheless he is a great marksman in the right hands. He is a versatile marksman. He can just let his Koopa absorb all the damage and do his damage from behind a bit carefully. It's cruel if you think about it. His skill also can set up traps and can vision zone out enemies and slow them, CC them, and his dog can deal a lot of damage. To counter Popol and Koopa, make sure to take advantage of his lace mobility. For build counters, use item like Anti-Cuirass to lower his damage output, or item like Dominance Eyes to reduce his attack speed. You can opt for steel leg plates in the early to sustain in the laning phase. For hero counters, use heroes like Minotaur, Atlas, Kufra to CC him and give an opening to your team, or heroes like Farsa, Change, Jas to deal damage from a safe distance. Next up is Granger, our emo boy. Granger is an extremely effective marksman if you can play him right. He have excellent mobility, great damage and a guitar case with rockets in it. He can easily come in and out of team fights with his mobility, deal a lot of damage from his skills. To counter Granger, make sure you can catch him with CC or suppression skills, or not stay or move in the path of his first skill. Bob and weave to dodge his ultimate. For build counters, use items like Antiquarius to reduce his damage output, or items like Twilight Armor to limit his damage to 600 on the first attack hit. You can also go for Wind of Nature to outplay him. For hero counters, go for heroes like Franco and Akai and Kaja to pin him down, or heroes like Eudora Kadita to catch him off guard. Next up is Miya. Miya, the face of Mlbb, becomes one of the most terrifying marksmen in the late game. Her ultimate can nullify most of the skills in Mlbb and help her reposition herself easily. To counter her, you need to make sure that her ultimate is used before engaging and using CC effects after it. For build counters, I recommend Antiquarius to lower her damage output, Blade Armor when opting for lifesteal items, and Wind of Nature when not going for defensive items. For hero counters, use heroes like Lancelot and Karina for their high reap and immunity in skills, or heroes like Hylos, Valer, Noveria to slow her down drastically. Moving on to Layla. Layla can be one of the easiest marksmen to use, and everyone knows about her mobility. The most mobile hero in the game. Her late game attack range is by far the highest in Mlbb, but countering her is easy if the player doesn't know how to maintain position. To counter her, you need to take advantage in the early game and gank her like she is the test dummy of your opponent. She is most of the time playing with a flicker to compensate for the mobility, so make her use her flicker before engaging so she won't have a chance to escape. For build counters, items like Antiquarius for their damage reduction, Brute Force Breastplate to gate the stackable defense, and Wind of Nature for non-defense items. Hero counters, I recommend heroes with good CC effects like a Minotaur, Atlas and Balric and not let her escape. Or heroes like Eudora, Kadita and Farsa for their CC and burst. Heroes like Hayabusa, Saber, Lancelot to one-shot. Moving on to Bruno. Bruno with his footballs is sure a nuisance if he is fed in the early game. He has good damage output, and players who know how to use his passive can dish out some serious continuous crit damage. He has blinked in his second skill, which also stuns the enemy in the path, which becomes very handy for him to escape. To counter him, make him use his skill 2 first to reposition him, and use CC effects to make him stunned for life. If Bruno gets in good position in team fights, he will dish out some heavy poke damage, so make sure to zone him out. For build counters, I recommend Twilight Armor to limit his first damage to 600, or by far the best item against him will be the Wind of Nature to immune his continuous crit damage. For hero counters, I recommend heroes like Hayabusa, Saber and Fanny to one-shot him, or heroes like Kai, Franco and Kaja to pin him down. And at last, we have Kimmy. Kimmy can be very irritating with her continuous magic damage output. Kimmy can be very hard to catch as she can also move around while throwing in her attacks. To counter Kimmy, make sure that you can close the distance between both of you without her getting noticed. She can be easily ambushed, so try to ambush her and let her come near you so you won't have the headache of chasing her. For build counters, use items like Radiant Armor to reduce her continuous magic damage. Also get Athena if still the damage reduction is not enough for the extra magic defense state. For heroes counter, use heroes like Ling, Fanny, Lancelot and Hayabusa for their high mobility. Heroes like Atlas, Johnson and Tigreal to catch her in their CC. So will you use these counters mentioned earlier? Did you find them helpful? Do share your thoughts in the comment section. That will be all for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Keep supporting Kazuki Official.